Hello, and welcome back to Tailwheel Tutor. This is Roland, and today we're going to have a look at what's involved in installing my brand new composite propeller and spinner. But before we get to that, I'd like you to have a look at this tail fairing. I built it over a male mold that was installed on the tail feathers. It's made of fiberglass, filled with microballoons, trimmed and finished. At a later date, I'll have a video about exactly how this was built. This fairing really makes a clean transition from the fuselage to the vertical and horizontal stabilizers. It also has a very important effect in the overall appearance of the airplane. The shape of the spinner, cowling, windshield, wing fairings, headrest, tail fairing, and the shape of the vertical fin and horizontal stabilizer help give the little toot its aesthetically pleasing lines. From the spinner to the lower cowling, leading edge of the wing fairing itself, the shape of the rudder, vertical fin, the tail fairings, the headrest, and even the windshield, the forward fuselage, and the sloping downward movement of the cowling into the spinner really give the little toot an amazing look. Of course, I've seen the little toot without the fairings on, and I can tell you that remove one or two fairings, even just one fairing, either the tail fairing or the headrest, and it gives the little toot a completely different look. Selecting the right spinner at the time of construction was an interesting task. It's important for you to realize that not every spinner contributes to the lines of the little toot the way this one does, the Grumman Tiger spinner. Unfortunately, these spinners were prone to cracking, and after 22 years of service and 3 repairs on the spinner, it was time for the spinner to retire. These pictures show just how beautifully the shape of the Grumman Tiger spinner mates with the little toot cowling. That's why I really wanted to stay with the Grumman Tiger spinner. Finding one online was difficult, but I did finally find a composite spinner for the Grumman Tiger, which I ordered and now have begun fitting onto the back plate, as you can see here with the match drilling of the spinner to the back plate. Here you can see that I've already cut out one of the holes for one of the prop blades, and I'm taking measurements from that cutout to measure out the other hole for the other prop blade. After a lot of careful measuring, I finally came up with this Sharpie line where the cut will be made for the prop blade. I have to tell you, looking at this video makes it look so easy, but in fact, I spent most of a day marking out that Sharpie line. And when you get to this point where you're starting to cut into a perfectly good spinner so you can custom fit it to your new prop and airplane, I gotta say, you have a few anxious moments. This is a $1,500 spinner. And if you are not very careful doing this, it could very well turn into a $3,000 spinner. Here I'm making the final cut. It's still rough. What we'll have to do now is change the blade on the Dremel tool to a sanding disc so we can do a final sanding and finish on this cut. So I'm sanding the rough edge just to the point where the Sharpie line disappears. That was my finished line. And here I'm fitting the spinner onto the rear prop plate, spinner hub, and prop blades. And as you can see, everything went really well. I have about 1/4 inch clearance between the spinner and the root of the blade, and that's exactly what I was looking for. That's looking pretty good. That's a few days work right there. Now that this is finished, we can take this whole project back home to the shop, where we'll take care of some of the finer details of this prop installation, namely the forward prop plate and the gussets. I really didn't have a plan on how I was going to build this forward prop plate. I just had to sit and think about it. The forward prop plate has to be secured to the propeller hub, and it has to have a flange on it deep enough so that the flange comes in contact with the inside of the spinner but does not cover the propeller holes. I came up with the idea to use a soup bowl to create the tapered portion of the forward plate to make the forward flange deep enough in the spinner to clear the holes. I then laid the entire assembly into the spinner and laid up a layer of fiberglass to form the beveled flange, the part of the forward plate that will be in contact with the spinner. The next day after the resin had cured, I took the assembly out of the spinner and put it on the workbench. All I want to do here is trim off the ragged edge of the set fiberglass. I'm just using a box of regular staples and a Sharpie to make a line around the entire perimeter of the plate. And now I'll just trim it with the Dremel. Now we need to cut out this portion of the forward flange, which covers the tapered portion of the forward plate, because we need to get to this tapered portion, the bottom of this tapered portion, so that we can screw it to the prop hub. So the bottom of that tapered portion will be screwed to the prop hub. So having cut out that piece of fiberglass, it leaves a pretty rough edge there, and we need to polish this up because we have one more layer of fiberglass that needs to be laid up on this. Because at this point, the tapered portion of the forward plate and the forward flange are simply bonded together with a light coat of epoxy resin. So we're going to want to lay up another layer of fiberglass in this area to reinforce that joint. I just want to take a minute to explain why I have to build this forward prop hub, forward prop plate. Every spinner has to have one. Without one, the spinner would fail. It would just, in time, fall apart. It adds strength to the spinner and is a very important part of the spinner prop assembly. So now we're ready to see if the spinner fits over top of the forward prop plate and settles in nicely into position on the rear prop plate. This will confirm that the forward prop plate is not too large in diameter. If it was too large in diameter, I wouldn't be able to get the spinner down onto the rear prop plate. But as you can see, it looks like it's fitting just fine. So I listened to this audio on this recording, and when I lift this spinner off, listen to the sound it makes. It's obvious that the forward prop plate was just stuck slightly in the inside of that spinner. Sounds like a perfect fit. Here's another replay of that. So this is telling me my forward prop plate is just about the right size. So as I said before, the tapered portion of the forward plate and the forward flange are only held together with one layer of fiberglass resin. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting ready to do one more layup on the tapered portion of the plate and the forward flange. I'm pretty certain that my diameter of this forward plate is pretty close to what I need based on what we just saw. So I'm not going to put a layer of fiberglass cloth on the bevel portion of the forward plate. I'm going to leave it for now. If I have to add another layer later to make it fit better, I can still do it. I can also use screws through the spinner into the bevel flange to secure the spinner to the forward prop plate if I ever have to. Now I'm just taking a roller to remove some of the excess resin that's on the plate. It's not a critical thing, but it does make the finished layout look better. So just a few rolls of this roller and it'll clean it up. So I've removed the excess cloth here, and of course this is the next day. This resin is hardened, and it's just a matter of removing the set portions of fiberglass cloth that we're not going to use. This is just extending beyond the forward flange. We're going to cut this off and polish this up so that we can handle this thing without getting any slivers. So on this prop hub, there's 4 screws that are going to be used to attach this forward prop plate. Drawing a line diagonally between screws locates the center of the prop hub for me. And on the forward prop plate, I have a hole, 1/16 diameter hole drilled right in the center. So by placing that hole over the cross marks on the hub, I can locate this forward prop plate. Once I've done that, I mark only one hole, drill it, and then I install the forward prop plate with only one screw in place. Then I locate the hole marking the center of the forward prop plate over the X created by the marks I put on the hub and drill the second hole. And this way, I guarantee that this forward prop plate will be centered on the hub. So now I'm getting ready to fit the spinner again, just like we did before, except for this time, the forward prop plate can't move. It's secured to the hub. So once again, I want the spinner to slip smoothly over the forward prop plate and in position on the back prop plate. So now I want to confirm the fit I have on the inside of the spinner relative to the forward prop plate. So what I've done to do this is I've removed the prop blades from the hub. Now I can use my fingers and feel how close the beveled flange is to the inside of the spinner. Now I'm feeling it, and I can tell you it's pretty darn close. But in addition to this check, I can do an inspection of the inside of the spinner, because with the prop blades removed, I can actually look in there. Using a flashlight, I can look and see just how the fit is between the beveled forward flange and the spinner itself. And I can tell you, it's perfect. I couldn't be more pleased with it. The next thing we have to do is finish these little corner sections of the prop blade openings on the spinner. So what I've done is I've taken a portion of the composite material I cut out previously, and I mated it in there and put 2 layers of fiberglass above it and 2 below. All right, that looks pretty good, but we're not finished yet. We need to clean up that rough edge of the fiberglass. We need to make a clean line, because if we don't, that rough edge of fiberglass will show through the paint. So I'm just filing down a line down to the composite material, and this will leave a nice clean line, and it'll look like it was always intended to be there. So now we're back at the hangar, and we're getting ready to install and fit this prop and spinner on the airplane. Something I didn't make video of is you might notice these red gussets behind the prop. Let me tell you that those were so frustrating to work on. They're not made of fiberglass or carbon fiber. They're made of 016 aluminum, and they were such a challenge and so frustrating to fit. I don't even want to get into it here. The video's already long enough, but I just want you to know it looks great, and I'm happy for that, but it wasn't easy. So I'm going to take this whole prop off, and we're going to get ready to install this whole assembly. I just want to comment on the fact that you might have noticed that the spinner is not painted, and there's a reason for that. I want to install this spinner on the plane and the prop, of course, and I want to ground run the engine. I want to confirm trueness. I want this spinner to be true. I want to make sure that everything fits before I send this to paint. So we're getting ready to do that now. This Colin Walken propeller is about 25 years old. I've only refinished once in the whole its whole lifespan, but it is being retired along with the old spinner. I think we're going to mount it on the wall for posterity. Here, Ned and I are installing the prop spacer, and this is necessary to get the proper spacing between the back of the spinner and the forward portion of the cowling. And here we have everything installed on the airplane. We've run it. It's perfectly true, and I couldn't be happier. So now it's time to put on the finishing touches and make it pretty. Painting is a little bit of it's an interesting task and an interesting skill. It takes only a few minutes to spray the spinner, but it takes a lot of time to prepare the spinner for paint, to prepare and mix the paint, and to clean everything up after you're done. So that's why I find painting kind of tedious. But I learned this skill from my brother Dan. He was a body man in his younger years. He has since gone on to become a very successful firefighter. and he's now retired, and I couldn't be more proud of him. Finally, the finished product. And if you look closely here, you'll see that sunspot on that edge of that fiberglass reinforcement section, which is just exactly the way I wanted it to look. And the paint job came out beautifully. So then I waited a week before heading back to the hangar. I didn't want to handle that spinner with fresh paint on it. It doesn't take much if you're handling that spinner. You'll see as I install this spinner, I'm handling it a lot, and if the paint on it is just a little tacky, you will leave fingerprints all over it. So I strongly suggest that if you are painting parts, that you let them sit for a good week before you start handling them. Otherwise, all that effort you put into painting your parts or your airplane or whatever it is that you're painting will be for naught. And if you're fussy like me, you'll end up doing it over again. But it wouldn't be the first time I've done that. I don't know if you noticed there just a minute ago, I just had the forward prop plate on the prop hub, and you might have seen like a dark black line around the forward edge of that prop plate. That was actually electrical tape, and I'm installing it on the forward prop plate so that I can monitor the wear that may be happening between the spinner and the plate. So, of course, I'm going to be monitoring this whole assembly for the first few hours. Probably every couple of hours I'll be taking the spinner off and inspecting it and making sure that everything is working properly. But if there is wear, then that electrical tape will show it, and it'll also give me some indication as to whether or not I have the right fit, even though I think we've already proven that the forward prop plate fits pretty good. So here I'm putting in the last few screws, and my gosh, look at how good that looks. I mean, look at the paint job on that. It's just gorgeous. And the last few screws are going in, and we're getting close to the finish of this project. And I have to tell you, you can watch a video for 40 minutes and see how a new composite spinner and propeller get installed on an airplane, but this entire project was 7 weeks. Not full time, that's in my spare time, but still, this took up most of the winter to get this organized, and before we even worked on it, we had to order a spinner. That took 4 months because they don't have them on the shelf. They lay them up as they're ordered. So that had to come in. We had to order the new prop spacer from a place in the States where we get those from. And well, finally, voila, this is done. I mean, that looks so good. The gray propeller with the spinner and the prop openings on the spinner just perfectly fit. It's amazing. It looks just great. I'm very happy. So we do have one more little project to do before we put the cowling on for the first flight of the season, and that is installing the last spark plug, which some of you might have noticed. It's not a conventional aircraft spark plug. This is an automotive plug, and of course the reason for that is because this airplane is equipped with dual electronic ignition, so we use automotive plugs. And this is Ned hard at work. A rare scene, even if I do say so myself. Just kidding, Ned. The entire project became necessary when the old spinner simply could not be trusted. It got to the point where something had to be done. The truth is, this project began 10 years ago. I started noticing problems with the spinner at that time. The prop was actually purchased in 2012. It's now 2022. It took me all that time to get motivated enough, or at least have some kind of a valid reason to get into the project. I do have experience with this kind of work. I've done a lot of fiberglass work in my time, and I've done some welding. I've done a lot of different types of work, not as a professional, but being in the hobby, building an airplane. So the prop sitting on the shelf for 10 years, the old spinners finally had it. It's time for me to do something. If you're wondering if that forward prop plate really is a good idea, let me tell you something. I have experience with this also. When I first acquired that metal spinner, while I was building the airplane, it came with a forward prop plate that in no way could have somehow, I don't know how it would have qualified to be FAA approved, but it was so light and flimsy, a simple little plastic plate that was in use with that spinner at the time. I ended up building a forward prop plate back then, and that same prop plate is still good today. It's just the spinner that couldn't hack it. I want to thank you for watching. I also want you to know that there's more coming. I have some interesting videos I'd like to make. One of them is the airplane that started it all for me, and I think you'll be very surprised what that is. The other one is if airplanes could talk. It's going to be a little out there, but I think you'll find it interesting, and it's all about if you could actually talk to an airplane, what would it say to you? There's a few other things I want to do. I want to do a video of the little toot when it's all put back together, and do a construction notes and design features of the airplane, which will feature some pictures from the archives back in the day when that airplane was being built in this very shop. Thank you very much. I appreciate you watching the video, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.